Hey everyone, I'm Jay Shear and welcome to Business Minds Coffee Chat. This is where remarkable people gather to share insights, lift and inspire, and deliver actionable content. So what do playing the piano and marketing have in common? Well, we'll be answering that question and much more on this episode. Our guest was a professional jazz pianist for 23 years until 9/11, when everything changed. In an attempt to find himself, he walked across Spain. Since then, he's built a highly successful digital marketing training and implementation company. He's a best-selling author, thought leader, and an engaging speaker who has shared the stage with the likes of Gary Vaynerchuk, Simon Sinek, Seth Godin, and Brian Tracy. He's been featured and interviewed on CTV, CBC, 680 News, Japan Times, and Toronto Star, to name just a few. Please welcome the CEO of Training Business Pros, Paul Tobey. Paul, it is so great to see you.
Great to be here. Thank you for the introduction.
Absolutely. Well, I'm grateful for you being here. So, Paul, many times we identify ourselves by what we do versus who we truly are. So let's start with who you are and what led you to the work you're doing today.
I think essentially I'm a creative person. I learned to be creative at a very young age when I started the piano at the age of 8. And I always was goal orientated. So I actually asked my piano teacher at the time, his name was Markwell J. Perry. He was the organist at our church. My father is a United Church minister. And in the first few weeks of our lessons, I said, Mark, if I'm going to do this thing, it's like, I need a reason, because everybody else is on the playing ball in the park, and we didn't have video games back then. And he said, well, Paul, it's always been a great goal to one day perform at Carnegie Hall. And I'm like, Mark, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? And he says, practice, practice, practice. And I actually did that for like 35 years, 23 years as a professional, and I never really got within spitting distance of Carnegie Hall. So that's not actually the right answer. And having played there a couple of years ago, I didn't get there by how well I could play. It's a good thing that I could play, because it would have been kind of embarrassing if I couldn't in front of 2,200 people, but it wasn't my ability that got me there. So what I've learned in life and how I'm doing what I'm doing now is that if you help enough people get what they want, you can essentially have what you want. And so I started applying my creative abilities to helping people get what they want. And it turns out they like to listen to music, but they don't actually want that. They don't want to be musicians. They don't want to, some do, but not enough. They want to build their businesses, and they want to make a living, and they want to support their families, and they want to be great people in the community. And so if you help enough people get those things, then you can pretty much do and be or have anything you want. So building an agency and helping people build their businesses and helping people make money, that was the ticket. And it was those relationships that actually got me to Carnegie Hall.
Well, I want to go back for a moment and unpack something that you and I had spoken about once before. When 9/11 hit and you took that trip to Spain, walked across Spain, what was the process like for you to come back, get clarity, figure out what the meaning of life is or what your purpose is and how you can best serve and show up to this world? So can you walk us through for just a moment what that process was like for you, and perhaps others can take a lesson away from that on how they can break through adversity?
The process for me was essentially horrible. It was, I mean, imagine waking up, like you do what you do, and most people have a career, a profession, they have a regular gig, they own businesses. But imagine waking up one day and no longer being able to do those things. And then you have to go find something new to do. And the only discernible skills you have are the skills that you've built to that point, which are not needed by anybody else. So when it fell apart for me after the music business, due to 9/11, tinnitus, tendonitis, there was a bunch of things in play at that time. But losing my recording contract was one of the big ones, because it was a company based very close to ground zero in 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And I just basically woke up and I'm no longer a professional recording artist. Well, what do I do now? I don't know what to do. So I actually, and things got really bad. My wife and I lost our house, and I mean, I don't want to claim poverty, but that's essentially what it was. We were getting there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I could always find a way to put food on the table. I could take a gig and do whatever. So I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to be a touring artist. And then I thought, okay, well, I'll go and get a job, right? But most businesses don't need a piano player. So it's like I can't even get a job. Like I sat down one day to put a resume together, and it's like, I can orchestrate. Well, businesses don't need orchestration. You know what I mean? So the first part of it was just living through a couple of years of depression. And it wasn't until I met a lady named Lori Rosenfield who invited me to like a Gary Zukav soul group. I don't even know how I got there, something to do with Oprah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really long story. Anyway, I'm in her house and there's free food, which is great because I'm really hungry. And she comes over to me after the meeting, and everybody's talking about Gary Zukav. I don't know if you've heard about him, but he's wrote several books. Oprah loves the guy. Seed of the Soul, Soul Stories, Soul Relationships. I've read a lot of his work, but I hadn't at that time. And she comes over to me after the meeting, and they lived in a 9,000 square foot home. I had to park my car 3 blocks away so nobody would see it. It was like a Ford Taurus with so many rust spots on it. You could shoot a gun at it, you wouldn't hit anything, you know? And they had like Lexus and Ferraris in the driveway. Like, it was insane. So I go to her house, and she comes over to me afterward, and I'm standing against the wall eating free food. And she says, "Paul, it's nice to meet you." She goes, "What's your problem?" And I'm like, my wife brought me, and I love the food. Thank you so much. I don't really get what's going on here, so I'm just kind of keeping to myself. She goes, "Okay, well, I'd like you to come back, but I'm not going to let you come back. Your wife's welcome anytime, but you can't come back. So you have until you do one thing for me." So she takes me by the hand, and she leads me into the library. Now, how many people do you know actually have a library? It's got one of those, things that go around the wall, right? The little ladders things on the wheels, right? And she's scanning all the books, and and I interrupt her a couple of times, and she pulls this tiny little book off the shelf, and she says, "Hold out your hand," and she puts the book in my hand, and she puts her hand on top of it, and she goes, "Okay, here's the deal. You can come back, but not until you read this book." And she goes, "I know you're coming back." And I said, "Well, how do you know that?" And she goes, "Because I want my book back."
Mm.
It was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And it was like the first nonfiction book I'd read since high school. And it was like the beginning of this. And she became my personal librarian. I would go back every week. She'd give me a new book. I consumed like 30 books in 30 weeks. And I'm still depressed, but I'm starting to feel better about myself spiritually, but I'm still broke and miserable and whatever.
Mm.
And then she gave me a book called The Pilgrimage, which was about the same author's trip across Spain. And I'm like, okay, I got to go do that. So I applied for Canada Council for the Arts. I got a grant to write music on this thing, and I took off for Spain because I just literally went to find myself. So then I walked across Spain and then figured, okay, I picked a destination. I was committed to it. I got lost 7 times. I broke my ankle, but I eventually got there because I'm committed, right? I'm deeply committed to at least figuring out how to get somewhere, right? Come back to Canada. I applied that to a thing. Applied that same strategy. It's like, instead of a destination, I'll pick a thing, something that I've always wanted, something that I could never possibly afford. Nobody in my family has ever been able to afford it. Nobody in the history of the Tobey family has ever been in this kind of tax bracket. And I'll put that on my mirror and I'll look at it every day for like the next 3 years. And I did. And I started helping people, and I started taking courses on how to help people. I started taking courses on speaking, courses on digital marketing. At one time, I started selling sheet music online, and all of this sort of knowledge just started to go into play. And then I got really, really excited, because then people started asking, well, how did you do that? How did you build that, that online marketing system? How did you sell online piano lessons? How did you do this? And then businesses just started like this. And I've been running like this, agency and consulting business for the last 15 years. And every time somebody asks me, can you do this? All I have to do is show them somebody else's project that I built. That's all I have to do. I just show them their project and, well, how much money did that make? And I'm like, I don't know. I took this company from like 3 million to 8 million in 3 years. I think we can do that. We can't do that. You can't sue me or anything, but I'll do my best. I did it for them. I think we can, whatever. So beginning was rough. Middle was exciting, and was profitable. Does that answer your question?
It does. And thank you for sharing. I do appreciate that. So you mentioned this in terms of helping others. You're a prolific trainer. You put out a tremendous amount of content and training modules, and you have your own online training program. So in terms of the ability to connect with others and being able to train others, was this something that you were gifted with from a young age? Is a skill that you honed over the years? Where did that come from?
So I have one gift. It's called self-discipline. So self-discipline is the ability to focus on what you really want versus what you want right now or in the moment. It's like, I really want to lose weight, but I really want this cupcake. Do you know what I mean? I really want to build a successful business, but I really want to binge Netflix. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my skill. And I learned that as a piano player. If you want to get anywhere as a piano player, you kind of have to put in the time. The training part of it was Harv Ecker's fault. So I went to, I think it was the very first course that I had purchased after reading all of those books from Laurie Rosenfield.
Okay.
Because somebody put a book in my lap called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And I started applying all the concepts of universal law and, all the Deepak Chopra stuff and all the Bob Proctor stuff. I started applying that stuff to sort of making money, because I thought, I'm a good person without money. Maybe it will magnify the person that I am. Maybe I won't become a horrible person. And so I started investing in myself. I think investment in yourself, especially when you have self-discipline, is a great investment. So I went and took this course called Train the Trainer, and Harv Eker showed up on the last day, but it was done by Rob Riopel and Blair Singer from Sales Docs. It was a really good course. It's like 5 days. It was a little weird in places. Like, you had to dress up and do weird things on stage to get over like being nervous. I was never nervous because I'd been in the music business for 23 years. So being on stage was kind of normal. I just didn't learn how to talk in the music business. So they trained me. And then when Harv showed up, he basically said, listen, if you have learned something and you've got a step-by-step formula on how to duplicate that for others, you have a duty and a responsibility to do so, even if in the beginning they're not willing to pay for it. Just put it out there. If you've got like a step-by-step thing that can help somebody get what they want, you have a duty and a responsibility to get it out there. And so after Train the Trainer, that's the first thing I did. I came back to Toronto and I scraped a bunch of email addresses together, and I invited people to a seminar on how to, it's called Success Tracks for Artists, right? How to get a record deal, or how to build a music business website, or, all the things that I'd kind of done that I didn't think anybody at first would want. wasn't such a great idea because, musicians don't really have any money, so they're not willing to invest in that stuff. But, businesses started showing up, other people from, curators of art places. And I took out a membership at what was the name of that club? It's called the Arts and Letters Club in downtown Toronto. It cost like crazy low money. It was like $700 to become a member, and I could use their facility, and it had a concert grand piano, and all I had to do was sit there and play to earn people's trust. It's like, oh, he's one of us. And then I did like a couple hours worth of courses. Then I would back end a day course or a 2-day course or something like that. And I've been doing that for the last, like, I don't know, now it's 15 years. So the training was not natural. It was, I'm trained. I went to TTT1, then TTT2. I've had 9 different public speaking teachers and trainers. People like Brian Clemmer, who are just brilliant at the craft, and Bob Proctor, and all these people. It's like, if you don't know something, because I always had people, they said, this is the one thing I always remember, is like, if you're not successful yet, there's just something you don't know yet.
So what a great way.
Something you don't know.
That's right.
So it's like, okay, well, I'll pay for that. I'll go figure out who has that. And I would always pick good courses and good teachers and people who were respected. And they just said, listen, when you're ready, you'll become the master teacher or the master trainer. And that's kind of what's happened.
Yeah, that is, that's really exciting. I mean, it's amazing when you look at a snapshot in time and you look at your story of, coming out of a very, very difficult situation, going through a depressed time, finding yourself, coming out the other end of that, creating this with just pure dedication and focus and a desire and knowing what you want to go after. Being
not every day.
Well, look, and that's an important point. That, do we show up our best selves every day? No, but when you look at it over a long enough time horizon, right, you start to see success patterns, and you've done that. So it's really interesting to look back over the years and see how you've developed, how you've adapted, right, and how you've changed and what you've learned and how you continue to stack skills.
I think the best businesses, the ones that have staying power, are the ones that actually solve problems. So there's a big, in the last 5 years or so, I've seen a huge trend towards people leaving their full-time gigs and becoming coaches and consultants and speakers. And, they're just really trying to find that happy life-work balance.
Mm-hmm.
But just as disturbing a trend is how few people are actually willing to do the heavy lifting. Most of it is based on trial and error. And I think that's a horrible plan.
Yeah.
Like, when you use the trial and error method, there's way more errors than there is anything else. And most people seem to make the same mistakes over and over again. And I think the big thing that I learned early on was, if you don't know something, go pay somebody for that information. It's kind of like a shortcut. But the problem is that most people don't really, that's not the way that they were trained. Like when you and I went to high school, right? Sorry, I'm a little bit older than you, but we didn't go to high school at the same time. So, but remember high school, right? It's like if you were doing an exam one day and you didn't know the answer to like question 6, right? So you yelled across the room to your friend, hey, Johnny, what's the answer to 6? And Johnny would go, it's C. And everybody would write down C, and you would write down C. You got in trouble for that. But in real life, you don't get in trouble for that.
Mm-hmm.
You actually get ahead that way. It's like, go find enough Johnnies who know the right answers, and it's based on experience. That's a shortcut. And if you have to pay for that, dig deep. Find a way to pay for it. I remember I put my first course, it was $3,500 US, on a credit card that had to be paid off by my dad. Oh, that was an embarrassing conversation. I actually called him from the facility. Dad, can you go pay off my credit card? He says, is this another one of your harebrained schemes? It's just like, no, I really want to do this. I think I can be a great speaker, a great trainer, or whatever. And I had no idea I could do that. I just bullshitted my dad or whatever. And I'm in my 40s, so getting dad to pay off a credit card when you're 40, that's embarrassing. But I did it, and I paid him back, and paid him back in spades since
There
then.
you go.
But I think people just, it's funny. I have lots of people in my That's Ambitious group, and you look in and they're paying, not very much money every month for a plethora of personal and professional development courses. And you look at how much they're actually consuming, and the answer is not that much. I think if people were a little more aware of what it's like on the other side
Mm.
of how your life just sort of all comes together when you've got sort of this combination of relationships and health and finances. I think people are just too used to being comfortable. They're not used to pushing the envelope of, of their financial well-being, which I found in life is one of the most valuable things I've ever done. Like if you said to me, Paul, you can go now and be the same person you are, but we're going to take away everything in terms of, we're going to take away your house, and we're going to take away your toys, and we're going to take away your bank account. We're going to take all that away, and you can start all over again. I was like, get out. I mean, I could probably do it again. No big deal, but I don't want to. I like the way it's turned out. I like going from broke to, I don't even want to say, like something else, not broke.
Well, so,
And it gives me so much more choices. I have more choices. And that just frees you up to be able to, like I was just saying, talking to my wife today, we're thinking, nobody's traveling right now. It's like, I'm looking at prices for like, a month in Clearwater or something like that, because I'm doing everything remotely now anyway. It's like, well, let's just take off for a month or whatever. And most people just don't think that way. Do you know what I mean?
I do, and it's a powerful lesson that you're sharing right now, and that is that sometimes some of the best learnings in life come through the pains that we experience. That's where growth occurs. And you could share your amazing content and not charge a dime, and people will listen to it, but the percentage of people that will actually take that content and act on it is a much smaller number. And there's no doubt that you've seen that over your career as well. It's until you've experienced enough pain where I absolutely have to take action, that tends to be the biggest motivator. So it's an interesting psychology.
Well, Eckhart Tolle, who I know you're familiar with,
Yes.
said that nothing great can come from no suffering, which I think is an interesting statement, because until you've suffered, you don't really know what greatness is. Like if it's always been sort of like comfortable, do you know what I mean? You've never faced any major health challenges or major financial difficulty, or in my case, a shift in entire like life situation, right, in terms of career or whatever. If you've never faced that, then you kind of don't really have any intrinsic motivation to get out of that. It's kind of like, oh, it's always been okay. I'm okay. Everybody's okay. We're all fine. We're getting by. But I didn't want to get by. I don't know about you. I don't want to get by. I think getting by is boring and frustratingly average. I just don't want to do that. I didn't take up the piano to be average, and I didn't get as far as I wanted to get. And so I'm just kind of doing it another way. Does that make sense?
It
like
makes
come at it
perfect
from a
sense.
different direction. And
No,
I might not have ever done that if it wasn't for that big fall. Do you know what I mean?
I do, and I love the way that you articulated that, and the mindset that you have to be able to apply that in life the way that we do. And you made a conscious decision to be exceptional, and you were exceptional as a jazz pianist, and I've heard you play somewhat recently on some videos, and my gosh. you are exceptional.
I know my way around, but it that's practice. That's just practice. That's all that is.
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit on you on that one, because I think you could take two people and have them both practice with a similar regiment, similar number of hours, and one of the two may far exceed the other in terms of capability and ability to be fluid and have the right type of ear and be able to sit down with a trio and be able to improvise and all those types of amazing things. And you've been able to do that, right? And that comes through tremendous amount of practice and skill and just continuing to be very, very driven. And, you know, and we had this conversation before, but I'm a drummer and I've practiced thousands upon thousands of hours and have played for years. But one of the things that I was gifted with was an ear for music. I could sit down and I could play with a group and I could very quickly be able to get into the pocket and be able to play somewhat effectively with the other members of a band that I'm playing with. And that doesn't just happen.
Right.
So what, you know, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the show about, you know, playing the piano and marketing and what do they have in common? So answer that question for us.
You know, I mentioned the word orchestration earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the piano is one of those few instruments, and there's not many like it actually. The guitar is kind of like it, but the piano, you're using every single finger to create bass, rhythm, harmony, and melody or improvisation, as it were. So in and of itself, some of the best orchestrators of our time, and by orchestration, I mean taking music and writing it for a large ensemble, like an orchestra or a big band or something like that. And some of the best arrangers and orchestrators tended to be piano players because they could play large sort of voicings on the piano and go, okay, that translates well. We'll put the trombones here. We'll put the French horns here, and the flutes and woodwinds are up here. And then we'll take these notes and we'll apply them to, you know, the violins and the violas and the, you know, whatever. And that's what creates orchestration. Business is very much like that. It's like, how do you orchestrate marketing, sales, fulfillment, HR, finance, leadership, universal law, and a bunch of others, and put them all together to get a result? And what I find is, more often than not, people coming out of the business world trying to do this fail because in the business that they work for, they might say to you, well, I helped the business make $12 million. No, you and everybody else in that business helped that business make $12 million. You didn't do that by yourself. Now you're on your own. Now you have to do all of the things that everybody else was doing that you don't know anything about. And it seems to be fairly rare for people to want to learn how to orchestrate all positions. You're running an organization. You have to get the right people on the right seat in the bus or the right chair in the orchestra in order to cover that part. And that's why I think most businesses fail in their first 5 years. People go through the whole trial and error process. My thing was, I did a lot of training, but I figured, this was my original thought. Okay, this may sound silly, but this is my original thought, right? Because I'm broken, impoverished now, right? And I've got nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
I've got no gigs planned. I've got no tours. I'm not, my record company is no longer funding my next album, which was really cool. That they did that for a time, but now they're not. So what do I do? And my original thought was, okay, I see people who seem to have better financial situations than me, and by that I meant they looked rich to me. They don't seem like they're any smarter. They don't seem like they know how to orchestrate, or I wrote 9 symphonies. How many of them have written symphonies? How many of them have played 10 times at the Montreal Jazz Festival for tens of thousands of people? I figured I'm not that dumb. I can probably figure out, and I really had no choice because I couldn't get a job, right? So I had to start a business, something. I started an online business and I started a training company. And I figured the whole time, it's like, I'm smart enough. I can figure this out. Like I can take instruction well, right? Just like I took it on the piano. I had many, many teachers. I have 2 degrees in music. I took their instruction pretty well, and I got this far. How do I get this far? And the answer is, I'm smart enough to get this far. I figure there's just something I don't know yet, and I'll keep going until I figure it out. Until somebody comes along and said, this is the instruction you need. This is the instruction that you're missing. And I'm good at taking advice. I'm good at taking instruction, especially from people that I admire and respect. I'm good at that. That's my gift.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the analogy. I can really see the orchestral imagery that you provided and how that aligns very well with a business and running a business and all
Yeah,
the various
the
moving
only difference
parts.
is the outcome, the result, right? The result from orchestration is beautiful music. The result from business orchestration is money.
Yes. Yes.
Return, right?
There you go. That's right.
Those are 2 different results. Nobody gets into business, unless it's the music business, of course, but nobody gets into business to make great music. They get into business to put food on the table, to provide for their family and for their neighborhood and their church, their synagogue, their community, whatever. There's a big difference in those things. One of the things is that music itself as a product doesn't necessarily give you enough to create more music. Money does that. Does that make sense? This constant flow of revenue, and now, I have choice. Now I can hire somebody to do that, or now I can subcontract that, or now I can go take another course, and I don't have to worry about where that's going to get paid for or how that's being funded. Does that make any sense?
It does. Or I can I can invest in the equipment to be able to record and be able to put my music out to the world to create more happiness and joy and all the other wonderful things that come through music. So it's
but I've never bought a house with love and kindness.
Yes, but I know you still put it out there.
I think it's important to have both. Like you have to be you have to understand universal law and be spiritually aware and just be a good kind, loving, caring individual. The thing about finance is it kind of magnifies those things, kind of gives you, like I said, more choice. So I'm a big proponent of both. In the beginning, it was like I read a lot of spiritual material and I started feeling really good about myself, but I'm still not helping.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I
you can
do.
feel really good, and it's like you can go live in a cabin in the woods, but who's that helping?
Sure. Well, I like you said, having both is important. And so along similar lines, describe for us then what success means to you. When you think about it, what do you envision? What does it feel like to you? And how would you define that for yourself, not for others?
Choice. I know it sounds simple, but you're not confined by choice. Like you now have the ability to buy more freedom, to sometimes make decisions about things that you want in your life that aren't confined by certain rules. Like, we always have these sayings, right? Like that's expensive, or that's too much. It's like, oh, that's just for rich people, or that's, I like not having as many restrictions. If I want to fly first class, I'll fly first class. It's not a decision that is made by somebody at a counter. It's made by what's in your wallet. Does that make sense? Like it's your choice if you want to do those things. And I'm certainly not ever trying to say it's the most important thing. What I'm trying to say is that if you are a kind, loving, caring, giving, supportive and just a great all around individual, a little more cash flow will magnify that in you. And you'll find a way to leverage that. If you have more, you can give more. You have to give more first, but most people don't understand that. That's kind of one of the rules, right? That's the law of giving and receiving, according to Deepak Chopra. It's not just the law of giving, it's the law of giving and receiving. You know, what goes around comes around, what ye sow, so shall you reap kind of thing. I had to learn that very early, being generous without money. But when you have it, then you're even more generous. Do you know what I mean? Like it just sort of magnifies. So to me, that's the first thing. It's choice. The second thing for me is there are things that I love to do that I'm never going to be good enough to get paid to do those things.
Give me an example.
Golf, right? I'm a good golfer. I'm just not good enough to get paid to do it. So if I want to continue that pastime, I have to fund that. Do you know what I mean? And I don't belong to your local, farm field course. I belong to the, Bayview Golf and Country Club. It's a full country club. Who would have ever thought that I, impoverished son of a preacher, could ever afford to be a member at a prestigious country club? And people will go, well, that's just obscene. Like, well, have you ever been there? Do you know do you know those people? I'm on the board of directors, by the way. So how did I get there? I mean, I serve. I don't get paid for that, but I love golf. So the second part of it is it helps fund a lot of things that I want to do that I can't get paid to do. Because people have, okay, well, I get funded to go to work, but how much does that fund the other things that I love to do more than work that I currently can't fund? I love boating and yachting. I love traveling. I've been so many places. I'm probably the most traveled person in the history of my family. I'm not saying this to impress anybody, but I love to travel. That costs money. I went to Italy last year for a whole month. A month. I don't know anybody that does that.
Yeah, an amazing experience.
Let me pull back a little bit. I don't know. Does that answer your question? Like, you asked me how I feel about it. That's kind of how I feel. If it's too much, you have to tell me.
No, I appreciate it because content and context are very important. So understanding what you think about, what you envision, why you do the things that you do in order to be successful. Those are all things that help give us context around the type of person that you are and how you show up every day.
Harv Eker used to say that 80% of success is just showing up. And I believe that. So I thought, well, what's 90%? I think the answer is showing up on time. What's 100%? If you want to be guaranteed 100% success in life, what's that? And I think it's showing up on time with energy. And what's the highest form of energy? Enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is a very simple formula. This one I made up. I didn't get this one from anybody. I thought, what's the formula for enthusiasm? And the answer is, number one, it has to be something you love to do. Absolutely. How do you be enthusiastic about something you don't love? So that's number one. So people get up every day and they go to do a bunch of things that they hate so they can put food on the table. Does it have to be that way? I don't think so. But then the other part of that formula is enthusiasm plus this other thing, what you love plus this other thing equals enthusiasm. And to me, that other thing is some kind of big goal, some kind of big result. It's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Well, I tried practicing. That was the advice I got. I should have never taken that advice, by the way, because he'd never played Carnegie Hall. So never take advice from somebody who doesn't have or did what you want to do, right?
Great point.
Like taking financial advice from somebody who's broke, it's not going to get you very far, right?
That's right.
So, so then I just started getting other advice, and the advice that I got was, it's all about relationships. And it turns out that I had had somebody in one of my training courses that I had helped tremendously who knew somebody that was on the team of people that eventually got me to play at Carnegie Hall. You have to love what you do.
Yes.
And you have to apply some kind of goal to that. And you have to get out of bed every day and you have to work towards that. And most people are like, oh, that just sounds so hard. That just sounds so frustrating. I like my life simple. I hate simple. I hate simple. Complicate my life. I used to put signs up all around my house. It's like, give me more responsibility.
Did you really?
I did. I put up little signs like, I had all kinds of ones like, you don't know everything. That was my favorite one. You don't know everything. You stick it on the wall. All these little messages to myself, like, keep going.
Yeah.
Right? Because most people aren't like that, but I don't want to be most people. I don't. I think being most people is kind of like boring.
Well, the wonderful thing is we have choices, and we can each show up in the way that we want to, that we see fit. And if someone has the desire to grow, to learn more, to be able to do more, that option is available. You can always learn more. You can always grow. You can always surround yourself with others who push you to be better and strive for excellence in whatever area of your life. So I want to shift for a moment and talk about your best-selling book, Suggestology: How to Get What You Want by Asking the Right Questions. So if you would, could you first share with us, what does suggestology mean and how is it used?
So suggestology is the art of activating in someone else their natural will to learn. So if you take the training environment, for example, everybody goes into training with an ample amount of content. It's usually too much. And when people get bored and they start playing on their phones or they fall asleep, a speaker's reaction to that is normally, oh, I need more content. So it's like, you've already fire hosed the entire front row. They're already soaking wet, and now you doubled the stream. They can't get more wet than they already are. Fire hosing people to death with content is like the opposite of suggestology. So suggestology is activating their intrinsic energetic nature to pay attention. Am I making sense?
Yeah. So give me an example, if you will, and when you respond, I'd love for you to be able to share how others can apply that in their own businesses.
So if we're in a sales presentation and you've got a pitch, right? You've put together this wonderful deck or whatever, and you don't check in with the people who are listening with, say, 10 different types of suggestology at least every couple of minutes, they're going to miss 3/4 of the presentation. So then you go to sell them something at the end with the price and everything, and they have a million questions because they weren't paying attention at all to your presentation. So it's worse now with Zoom. I actually have a training coming up in December called Train the Online Trainer, which is the whole art of activating someone's natural will to learn in an online environment like you and I.
Mm.
So what would be some of the things that you could do surrounding your content with context that could engage an audience? The usage of the chat area, taking frequent breaks, using different types of suggestology. For example, instead of making a statement, simply ask a question. What is the meaning of suggestology? Leave a 5-second break, let them think it over. Because if you're just pounding with statements, the attention span of the average North American is like 8 seconds. I think it's less than that now, it's like 7. And so suggestology is sort of that neurolinguistic side of context that says, are you with me? Does this make sense? How many times have I said that today? Does that answer your question? I do it as a natural extension of a conversation because I want to make sure we're both in tune with each other.
Mm-hmm.
You're the one giving the interview, but I want to make sure that I'm actually coming across like that makes sense. So I'm constantly checking in with you, right? Are you with me? Is that, do you get the meaning of that? Can you relate to that? Those are ask relating questions. Then there's, if you were in a setting, you could leave off the end of your, there was like, oh, sentences. So their mind, when you leave space, the mind goes, oh, I'm aware, it's like a question mark, right? You draw a question mark. It's like questions hook the mind and they emphasize its meaning. Hook the mind, emphasize its meaning. And people rarely use questions in presentations. Me, on the other hand, I leave pauses and breaks and questions and fill in the whatever. That's suggestology. And you're activating someone's natural inclination to go, oh, I think I know the answer to that. Oh, I can participate in that. Make the audience the star. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And that's very powerful. And I've watched a couple of training videos of yours where you've been in front of an audience. And one of the things that hit me almost immediately was the number of times that you asked the audience members to repeat something that you said. So let's just say you give a revenue figure or some piece, some data point. You ask them to repeat the information. And it makes perfect sense. It connects why and how you're using suggestology to keep that group engaged in the conversation and not zone off.
Yeah, can I add just quickly to that?
Please.
In the beginning, you must set a tight context. So in the beginning of your brief, there's a really great introduction template. It was created by a bunch of great people like Tony Robbins and Conrad Levinson and a whole bunch of, and I learned this introduction. And it's basically, scan 2 enrolling questions with thank yous, name of presentation, big 3, ask permission, earn the right. There's just this whole introduction template, which is part of my training these days. But then there's like this context part where you're basically getting the audience to agree to the way things are going to go, right? Which is the greatest tool on the planet. So here, you do something like this. So how many of you would agree that if we participated in this training a little bit more than kind of just sitting and listening, you might get a lot more out of it? Thank you. How many of you would agree that if we participated with a little bit more energy than that, we might get a lot out of it? Say aye. And everybody goes, aye. And I'm like, thank you. You have to acknowledge, right? Say thank you for whatever. Once they agree to that, then you have the ability as a trainer to go, when you're seeing people tune out, you go, hey, listen, we all said that we were going to participate with a high level of energy. I need to bring you back. Here's what we're going to do. And just take a shift, a sidestep, use a state change, a sidestep from the information. Because if you pound and pound and pound away, you might look smart, but nobody's listening. Mm. And it's always the super smart people. It's like, ooh, look at all the data I have. And everybody's like, oh God, more data. And they put up a PowerPoint slide with like 13 lines on it. And they riff on every line. And it's like, I finished reading the 13 lines 5 minutes ago and you're still riffing on number 6. Like, I don't need that. I need to be awake. I need to be in the moment. So setting a tight context and acknowledging participation. As long as you're acknowledging their participation with words like thank you, oh, that was awesome, or great job, or whatever, acknowledge like a coach, right? It's like good goal. Audiences need that.
Yeah.
And they need to participate. They need to stand up and be the star and answer questions. It's like, you don't know the answer to a question. I said, who here knows the answer to that question? You always get like 3 people to put their hand up wanting to answer this person's question. Well, let them answer it. You may know the answer, but let the audience answer it. That's the whole point of Facebook.
Mm. So incredibly interesting. Well, you alluded to something in your response, which didn't go by me without noticing, and that was you alluded to NLP Tell us about a thumbnail sketch, if you will. Tell us about NLP and the role that that plays in your life and business.
Every word you say has power. So being able to not only construct powerful suggestology based sentences to get people to acquiesce to your will. NLP is really about getting people to say yes. You want more people to say yes, you have to learn NLP. It's like, because people are so programmed to say no. As soon as you start talking about an investment, people go, oh, I knew this was coming. You're going to sell me something. It's like, God, I'm more like, what have you got? Is that worth anything to me? I'm like listening. But most people are like, oh, I get a lineup of people at the end of the, when we used to do live presentations, I've done a lot of them, probably tens of thousands of people over the years. You always get that lineup, that stage, right? They want to stand there with their order form and give you all the reasons why they're not going to sign it and give a credit card number. My only job at that point is to decide what personality type they are. That's all I have to do. I have to put them in one of 4 personality type groups, right? Are you a controller, an analytic, a supporter, or a promoter? As soon as I figure that out, I know exactly how to get at least a third of the people in the line to sign the piece of paper. That's NLP. That's all part of it. You have to be able to, as a salesperson, you have to understand what motivates different types of personalities and how to get them to play at something that they're innately looking for a way out. That's what people try to do. It's like, it's not my fault that I'm broke. I don't have any money, so I can't invest in that. So at the end of the day, they don't really see it as their fault. They just see it as, I don't have any money, so I can't invest. Do you know what I mean? And you have to find a way to get them to say yes anyway. That's what Harv and his boys did with me. Like, they got me from the back of the room to the front of the room in 3 days. And I'm like, if you can do that without playing a note of music, you've got my attention. Because I need to know how to do that at my concerts. I need to know how to sell. Oh, here's an interesting story. I go take that course and I had a concert later that year, right? I'm still a little bit dabbling in the music business and I decided to apply some of those things to this concert. I had like 800 people.
Okay. And
the most CDs I'd ever sold in my life was 40. And that was in Japan where they love jazz and they're willing to buy shit because they have money, right? And I thought I died and gone to heaven. At this concert, I applied some of the train the trainer stuff and I basically did this. Don't do it at the end. At the end of the concert, they go, Sally's at the back of the room. She has a stack of CDs there. If you don't buy a CD, I won't be able to eat tomorrow. The typical musician line, right? At intermission, when they had nowhere to go, this is what I did. I said, how many of you loved the music from the first half? At least a couple of songs. Everybody just clapped, right? I'm like, well, I actually have this brand new CD that I made. It has everything, every single thing I played in the first half on this CD, and it's for sale out in the lobby. And I said, oh, and I also have this other one. This is the Juno nominated CD, which I also had a bunch of copies of. And if you buy this new one, I'll give you this one for free. But I only got 100. Have a great intermission. And everybody got up and pounded the sales table. And on the sales table, I had 15 people at the sales table. 3 of them moved around to the front to look like people buying stuff. And then they moved around as other people showed up. I sold 422 CDs in 10 minutes.
Wow. Well, you used several different principles there.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do those things. I had to be trained how to do those things. And so now that's my job. I need to train. I need to pass on that information to other people because sales, it's the number one skill you need in business to be successful. If you're not selling, it's not a business. It's a professional hobby. Get over yourself. Go make some money. You'll be better off for it. You'll employ more people. People around you will be happier. You'll be a lot more generous. Get on with it. And people are like, oh, I don't know. It just sounds like so much work. And I'm not a good salesperson. You think I am? I'm a jazz musician. We don't talk.
We talk with our
fingers. Honestly, it's anyway, that's the way I look at it. I hope that all makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. So the digital marketing space is pretty crowded today.
Very.
Yeah, it's I'm getting
And everybody's an expert.
everybody's an expert. I'm getting bombarded with emails and Facebook ads and all kinds of
Yep.
things with these companies that are going to, you know, truly help my business grow exponentially, right? So, with that said, how does one go about choosing the right digital marketing company to work with, and what should we look for?
Well, I don't think there's any right or wrong. I think it's just results. You're looking for results. So how do I pick the one that's going to get me the biggest results? Um, you got to go for the one with the most experience.
So, are there
Story. And I know there's budgetary restrictions to that. I work with established businesses, so most of them don't have budgetary restrictions. Some do, but um, they wouldn't keep paying me month after month if I didn't produce. I'm in the I get paid based on results. That's how I get paid. You can cancel your contract with me any time of the month. You give me 30 days notice, we're done. And that's the way I've been operating for the last 14 years.
hmm,
And I've had clients for 8, 9, 10 years, paying every month, not small amounts, fair amounts, it's all 5-figure stuff. Um, go for the one with the most experience. Go for whatever you can't afford. Go whatever you think you can afford if you actually get the results that are promised. And that's part of the problem. It's like, well, I promised this and it never turns out that way. And then litigation, and it's tough. It's tough. I've been doing it for a while, and I'm still learning. I stay on top of my game. I learn every day, but I think go for the copywriters. Go for the people that actually know how to put a good page together to get people to actually do something.
okay?
Like if I put out a webinar, I usually get 200 or 300 registrations without spending any money, simply because of copywriting. you know um Got a lot of that stuff from Joe Vitale and Gary Bencivenga, and there's a book recently I read called Yes, which is all about persuasion, secret psychology, for Dr. Robert Anthony. Here's the problem, right? It's like I'm throwing out all these names because I didn't create any of this. I just learned it from somebody else. And I think that's the big trick to business, is just go. And your question is, well, what company should I pick? And the answer is the one that lets you out of the contract at your choosing, right? It's your choice to get out whenever you want, right? And the one with the most experience. And do your research. Don't just take the guy that says, "Oh, I'll do it for $5,000 and away we go," and whatever. And
Well, I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because it's, for many of us, we're again, like me, where you're bombarded with ads and emails. It can get confusing, and if you don't know someone that's in that space, someone that you like and that you trust and already have a relationship with, you don't have a lot to go off of. So, for an expert in that area to be able to give some areas that we should be focused on, maybe some better questions that we could ask to kind of vet through all the noise and figure out where's the right alignment. Who is producing results.
so, okay, so here's I think possibly a different answer, but a better answer. And
Okay.
that is, in every course that I give, for example, That's Ambitious is my personal and professional development. There's a lot of professional development courses in there. If you go take the copywriting course, the CRM course, and the website construction course, and maybe the productive remote work environment course, like 4 courses,
Okay.
which you could easily do in a month. So it's $100 investment, right? You go and do that in a month. You'll be able, from those courses, to now better be prepared to ask the important questions. You may not be prepared to do everything that I'm asking you to do, but you'll certainly be informed enough to question somebody else when they say, "Oh, you don't need a CRM," or "What CRM should I be using?"
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to recommend the one that they like because it's the one they're used to. So it's ActiveCampaign or Infusionsoft. They don't know that they could save several $1,000s a year by getting Groundhog. They don't know that. So that's how to do that. Go take enough courses, like maybe, an hour and a half each times four. It's like, or 6 hours. Go take 6 hours worth of courses, which is an investment in your time, of course. But you're going to come out of it so much smarter that you'll be able to now vet people when they try to BS you. And there's so much noise and BS in this industry, because you can you can work at McDonald's one day and the next day call yourself a web host or a web designer, right? You go take a web designer course. Well, just because you took a web designer course does not make you a great marketer.
Yes.
So it's a combination of all of those things.
Well, that's perfect, and I'm glad that you shared that, because knowing where to go for help, being able to educate yourself so you do know the right kinds of questions to ask, that is critically important. And knowing that there's so much information out there, being able to become a bit more laser focused and know the areas that I can go to become more knowledgeable on a subject is quite beneficial. So thank you for that. Before I ask my final question, and it always amazes me how quickly time goes, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. And
Yeah, me too.
for the two of us, we're going to have to schedule kind of a part 2 to this at some point, because there are many other areas I would love to go into. But for the sake of time, where can we go to connect with you?
So the best place to connect with me is that'sambitious.com. There is, through that you can join the Facebook group on Facebook. There's like a That's Ambitious open user group and a That's Ambitious members group. So if you want to go to the open user group and join and ask any questions you want, that's great. Other people can answer them, not just me. That's probably the best way. PaulTobey.com, Tobey, has links to like different things that I'm doing. It's got like links to the Jazz Mental Project. It's got links to, I'm not even sure if there's a link to my business in there, but that's Training Business Pros.
We'll make sure to link to those two sites in the show notes.
Sure.
So here is my final question to you. You know firsthand that asking better questions at the right time can dramatically change our lives. So what are 1 to 2 questions that you're asking yourself in order to take your life and business to even greater heights?
Well, actually, I think I don't normally say that's a great question, because if you say that during a seminar, the person who didn't say that to says, I thought my question was great. So actually, that's one of the things you're never supposed to do. But I actually like this question. And I actually have I think, not just a personal experience answer, but a good answer to that question. So the first question that you have to ask is, what do I really want? What do I want to do, be, or have in my life that I don't have right now? And never stop asking that question. Don't ask it too often until you've actually completed the last one. So if you're asking it all the time of yourself on the way to something you've already picked, you're going to get distracted, and there's just too many distractions to pull you off that path. So when you reach it, like you get to Santiago in Spain after walking 850 kilometers, and then, well, what do I want to do? I want to walk further. So I walk to the coast. So there's another, whatever, it's a total 1,000 kilometers. I get back to Canada. Well, what do I want now? So I pick something I wanted to have. And that led me, and then the universe opens up and goes, okay, how do we help you get that? Who can we send as beacons on your path to serve you well on that journey? Who can we, because if you don't keep asking that question and you don't know what you want, it's the number one reason why you won't get it. Well, I don't know what I want. Well, it's pretty sure you're not going to get that. Yeah. You don't even know what it is. So that's number one. Number two is, where can I get a healthy dose of self-discipline to actually carry out number one? Because that's all it takes. That's really all it takes. And the worst self-discipline is part-time, dabble at this. I call them dabblers, right? People who dabble at business. I hate dabblers. I mean, they're fun to be around maybe because they got lots of things to talk about. But I like talking about wins. Dabblers don't get wins. So, if I want to play at Carnegie Hall, okay, I have to state that consistently all the time until I get there. I can't lose my focus. I can't be sidetracked. I can't do all those things. But it's also going to take a certain amount of self-discipline in order to do the things that are requested of me. I have to learn new things. I have to implement new things, and I have to look at those results. I have to learn how to optimize those results. Then I learn how to customize new results based on the optimization process. And that takes self-discipline. And most people, unfortunately, have never really developed that. They're kind of like, I'm sort of in. Brian Clemmer called it deep commitment. You want to be deeply committed? Here's how to manufacture deep commitment. You ready for this? Okay. I love this. Brian Clemmer. Get deeply invested.
Yes.
And what's the best investment you could make? In you. You can make investments in our 401ks, and you can make investments in stocks and bonds and things like that. You have no control over the outcome, none. But you invest in yourself. You have complete 100% control over your actions. And if you're deeply invested and you've got skin in the game, then you'll find a way to become self-disciplined. I guarantee it. But most people are like, oh, I don't have the money right away. It's like, take me out of the game. People just want to blame, justify, deny, complain. They want to do all of the things that don't work because that's fun. None of them really, most people don't really want to be responsible for getting somewhere, because if I'm responsible to get somewhere and I don't get somewhere, I'll just be disappointed. So I'll set the bar really low so that I can avoid disappointment, right? Well, I didn't think I was going to get that anyway, so I'm fine. Me, I think it's better to do, be, or have something way up here so that if you shoot for the stars, you'll at least somehow hit the moon.
There you go.
Really want to get to the moon, you got to know it took like 70,000 people and billions of dollars to put somebody on the moon. It's sure as hell going to take a little bit of investment on your part to make $1 million.
Great answer. And thank you. Appreciate that. Perfect words. So, Paul, I'm grateful for you. Thank you so much for being on Business Minds Coffee Chat today. It was a great conversation, and I look forward to continuing to see where this relationship can develop and grow, and thank you.
Hey, listen, I had a really good time. You're a fantastic interviewer. You had some really powerful questions, and I'm just so happy to be able to share today. So thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And for the rest of you, thank you very much for watching. And if you found value in this episode, you know what to do. Go ahead and like and share with your friends. And be sure to subscribe to this channel. And until next time, stay healthy and optimistic. Keep learning and growing. And remember that transformative change in your life and business always begins with you, and nothing happens until you take action. And we'll see you on the next episode of Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care.